Hi, everybody. Today is May 2nd. When American stocks aren't going, the China stocks tend to dominate, and I hate China stocks, and for good reason. I posted that movie to watch. I really feel like you guys need to watch that. It'll be very helpful to you in understanding what's really happening with the China stocks. You need to know, but I'm not going to get into that because the movie is very self-explanatory. As a day trader, though, we can trade these Chinese stocks. I just wouldn't hold them past the targets or into closing bell or anything, because you just never know. It doesn't matter what they're doing. Don't hold them into closing bell. Anyway, TIRX is one of those Chinese stocks that I did feel confident enough to post a trade plan for them. What I wanted to focus on in this video was entries. Okay, you guys know your exits. I give you those. Your targets are pretty obvious. Now, when I make them thicker on my chart, that's a weekly level, and I try to mention weekly levels. If I see a weekly level that I think is important to post, I'll mention it. And so we had a couple of those on this one, but I want to focus on entries because I know you know your targets, but I don't think you're very confident with your entries, right? I don't tell you when to buy. Technically, I can't tell you when to buy. The chart, you have to base your buying decisions on your own chart reading skills, but I'm going to give you a lesson on that right now. I have adjusted my charts a little bit to show pullbacks a little more clearly, to give a few more opportunities to buy after the pullback. And with that, I've got these little blue arrows, and all they are is just to show red to green, okay? We had this little red, and then it went blue arrow at this green candle. Your entries ideally are these blue arrows, but not always. And what you're looking for is the body closing above this 9 EMA, which is this light blue dashed line. So the body closed above the 9. This one, the body closed above the 9. Okay, so these were good entries. This one also. Over here, no, the body did not close above the 9. It closed above the 20, but I like to see it close above the 9. Okay, my 20 is this white line. Okay, here's another one. It closed below. It's tricky. When the candle is still forming, it's hard to know where it's going to close, right? So you might want to wait till the next candle. Even though you've got a blue arrow, it doesn't mean you're going to get in. Make sure your body closes above that dashed line. Then you're going to take it to the next target. This candle closed above it, but it was right at the target. So a lot of the times, if you're not at a target, you're going to go to the previous high, and it just couldn't even do that here. You see that? And I think the reason that this one struggled at that point, let me zoom out so we can talk about that. The reason that this one struggled, it started to struggle at that point, at this line. This is a weekly level. A weekly level is very strong, okay? That was pretty much the end for that stock. It literally gave everything back. And that's what China stocks do. I just hate them. But if you can see a setup and you know where your target is, just use this little system for entries. You might need to wait for the candle to close and then start forming the next one. If it closes above the 9 EMA, then you're good to go, okay? The next one on our list was SFML, and this was an American stock, and it had news, it had really good news. This is that chop zone. I said it might become choppy in between this line and this line. Well, look what it did. When I mentioned that things might get choppy, a lot of times they may reject somewhere in there. And that's what we had. It hit the top part of that and it rejected. And this thing was tricky because it halted. It had this humongous, this candle was not the halt. The candle, this one was the halt right here at, I think it was 9:42 this morning. Came out of that halt, and I was able to get in right before that halt. And it pushed from $4.52 or whatever it was all the way up to $7.42. So that was just this huge $3 candle because everybody piled on, and it filled all those orders, and then it was done. Got into that chop zone, and I was able to get out just fine. So I was able to get in at 446, get out at 680, and do really well with that. But this was an American stock, and I felt pretty good. But again, if I mention a chop zone, make sure you respect that. Don't press your luck, especially in this market. Now, you'll notice that I didn't have a blue arrow. I missed the blue arrow. And sometimes you'll get one. I didn't get one, but I felt like it probably has too much momentum to give me a pullback. It'll probably just push. So I didn't get one there. And here we have some blue arrows. But again, now here, this one is closing above the 9. So you can take it to the next target. And look at it. Found that target, didn't it? Found that level, and it was done. So yeah, if you get one above your 9, just take it to the next line. If the next line is your previous high, then do that. Okay, so that was SMFL. The next one I mentioned was MINM. I think it was US, and it had some news. I don't remember what the deal was. Okay, but let's talk about entries. I didn't trade this one because it took forever to set up. And by the time it set up, it went nuts. It went so far. And I didn't really continue with my trade plan because I gave up on it. And I actually left my office for a while. And then this thing just flew. It became above all resistance, basically all recent resistance. This thing, the reason it was moving, it was a recent reverse split. So let's look at the daily chart right here. Okay, here's that. See this purple circle right here? That's the reverse split, which wasn't too long ago. It was just a couple of weeks ago. Okay. So what I do, and on this one, I found the previous high. I was kind of conservative with it, but I drew a line there. I didn't mention this line to you guys, I don't think. $6.86. We'll look at that in just a minute. And then this, see this high wick? That's another line. That was $11.76. And then I had another high wick here, which was the $13.38. Okay. So let's look at 6. That's this one. It just flew right through that. 6, whatever it was, 684 or whatever. And then here's this line, which was that 1336, and this was that other one, 1182. Okay, and you see how it respected both of those lines? So you guys could have drawn these levels without me, and you would have got in. Okay, so here we have a blue arrow, a red to green blue arrow, but you got to know your stop loss, okay? Your stop loss is going to be the long red tail, okay? So here's a long red tail getting in here. So you could have got in on either of these blue arrows without even feeling any pain whatsoever, okay? It held the 9, you're just going to stay in. Or if you were already in on this one, which was also good, it closed. See how it closed above the 9, this blue dash, that candle body is above that 9. So that's a good entry. Maybe you would have got in on this one and you just keep going. But you have to be careful of your targets. If it's holding the 9, just stay with it through the target. Now we're seeing a little bit of weakness pulling back, but it didn't close below that 9. So at this point, you're so far in the green, you might as well just stay with it until it closes below the 9. And if it doesn't close below the 9, go to your next target. For me, I would have been getting out on this one. I would have tried to sell into strength. I probably would have got out somewhere in the 12-11, knowing how things go with me. But this one would have been scary, okay? This little blue arrow right here, because it's above the 9, right? But you've got to think about it. Think about it. This thing had pushed hard. There's people going to want to take profits on this candle. They're going to want to take profits. They're looking for someone to buy their shares. And so you're going to see it sell. That was a big move. That was a really big move. And so don't get greedy. If you're at a target, go ahead and get out. Don't worry about this, because you know after it hits a target, it has to come down to the 50, right? Technically, I was thinking it should have come down to the 50 somewhere in here, but it didn't. It didn't even close below the 9. But at this point, you know it needs to come down to the 50 and then decide, is it going to continue or is it going to just sell down? It couldn't hold that 50 on this candle. It could not hold the 50. So then it sold down. We didn't have a blue arrow where the candle is actually closing above the 9. This candle kind of closed above the 9, but I like it when the arrow itself has the candle closing above the 9. And here we just didn't. And now we're on the downtrend. All right. So that was NIMN. And then the last one that I mentioned, VCIG. And this is another one of those Asian. This is a recent IPO, like, I don't know if it was today or yesterday. Let's look at the daily chart. Oh, okay. It was like a week ago or something like that. 2 weeks ago, maybe. Just not a lot of data, and it was above all the levels. And it's Asian, so there's really not a lot you can do. But let's talk about this, though. I put these lines on here based on this move right here. We had this high and then a pullback. So I just used this as my top click and where price started right here at the yellow EMA, which is the 200. See how that got really flat there? I just clicked here on this high and then down here to the low. And that's how I drew these, and that put this next series of lines on here. So if you were watching this stock and you had put this target right here, you're looking for an entry. So here's your entry. Here's your stop loss, this red long tail of the red candle, and then getting in on this one. The risk was high on this stock. I don't care how you look at it. The risk was high. The candle was $9.60 all the way up to $13.56. That's huge, right? $4 candle on your entry. But it continued to hold the 9 and marched all the way up. So you're at a target, right? but it's holding the 9, so just stay with the 9 to your next target. I probably would have got out at this yellow, which was 1856. No, there was no way I was going to trade this thing. But it was giving signals right at targets, which is scary to me, right? Sure, it moved up to the next one, but you can do that. If you're willing to take the risk, make sure that you know what your stop loss. In this case, it's going to be the red tail of the previous candle or the long tail. If there's a tail that's longer than the previous one, use that one, okay? Like this case, we had this one, I would have used this one and then just taken it, stayed with it. But that was VCIG, and I've shown you how I drew the lines based on that first move before the red pullback, okay? And then used this as my bottom, okay? And they were really accurate. And see how it kind of hesitated on this yellow. Again, the point of this video is your entry. Okay, you know your targets generally. I'll give you the targets, but your entry is going to be the blue arrow if the candle is closing above the 9 EMA. And stay with it. Your stop loss is going to be the long red tail, previously the long red tail, and your target is going to be whatever target we're working with. Here it tested it. It was continuing. It was holding the 9, so it's probably going to push through that target onto the next. Okay, so that's how you can kind of read this level. This was just a pullback. It was not a target. Okay, it was a pullback. You're going to go to the next line and use that as your target. Okay, I hope this was helpful to you. If you have any questions at all, let me know and I'll be sure and answer them. But I hope you have a great rest of the day and we'll talk soon.